Welcome. This is the first event we literally my team finished this LLC. This is the LLC. They finished it literally this week. It's been a 2-month forced march project. This is our first event. Thank you, Hilda, for inaugurating the LLC. The LLC stands for Lunatic Learning Center. So this is the official Lunatic Learning Center. How many of you came to gatherings last year in the Hoop House? Several. Okay, good. Thanks for coming back. I know Wendy's been, promoting this, showing pictures of it on our social media. The two things we realized at the end of last year were the Hoop House was too hot in July, and nobody liked the hay bales. They were cute to look at. They weren't fun to sit on for 2 days or all day. And so we knew we had to go to chairs and go to a different kind of structure. And so, we spent the winter haranguing and drawing and planning and feuding and putting flags there and walking away and thinking about it for a week and coming back and making changes. And we finally ended up where I wanted it and how I wanted it. So hope everybody can, I call this classic rustic. And you can tell we didn't buy much from the system. We got it from the woods. We milled the rafters. The poles are locust that we cut up in the woods. The biggest bugaboo was about a foot into the soil. We hit solid rock, and we end up having to jackhammer every one of these holes. That cost us about 2 weeks in the construction. But the team came together and made it happen, and thank you for being here. So Hilda wanted me to talk about behind the curtain. We were going to do a farm tour, but just as it missed it, and it was it's tough. At lunch, you're welcome to take a walk right behind where you park. There's the Eggmobile. The broilers are behind that. There's pigs behind them right in the edge of the woods there. The pigger raiding, if you've heard about pigger raiding, but you've never seen it, we're actually finishing it up right now, and you can go to the barn and see the actual pigger raiding going. Feel free to walk in with the pigs. If you keep moving, they won't eat you. Remember, pigs are omnivores. And so I tell kids, yes, you can go in and pet them, but keep moving. There's a reason why the mafia has pigs. And you're welcome to see anything. Everything is open throughout the day. So Hilda wanted me to kind of go behind the curtain and talk about the magic and just the magic part of the mundane things that we do. We do a lot of repetition here. A farm's a lot of repetition. You gotta plant the garden. You have to you milk the cow, and this is, you do it, especially cow milking. I mean, it's every day. Easter, Christmas. Somebody's got to do it if you want to leave, right? We move the chickens every day. We move the cows every day. And there's a lot of just repetition kind of stuff. So let's talk about some of the joy and the mystery. What's the unspoken thing behind all of these kind of repetitive, or what a lot of society would think are mundane things that we do. So I've got several here, and I've got some props that I'll look at here in a little bit. The first one is water development. Last evening, actually, I took Sally and Sina and Hilda and Kathy, I think that was all, up the mountain. They got here early enough and went up the mountain and showed them our water system. So what you don't see is 8 miles of buried water lines along the edges of all the fields that come gravity fed, 70 pounds of pressure. So that's almost double your regular house pressure. It's like a fire hose. Gravity fed from permaculture style ponds that we've built up on high terrain we're blessed with some terrain elevation differences here on the farm. So we've built these ponds up there and have this network of water that comes around the farm, and also other ponds that we built, obviously right there by where you parked. If it gets dry in July and August, we've drained that pond with irrigation. And so this water development, what's the deal with that? It's a lot of work. It's not cheap to have those things dug, but it's important to realize that 500 years ago, 8% of North America was water. But it wasn't built by Caterpillar and John Deere construction equipment. It was built by a group of 200 million beavers. These were beaver ponds. Even in the arid Southwest, down in Nevada, New Mexico, were massive beaver ponds. And imagine how that changed the evapotranspiration, the ambient temperature. Water is mass. It cools in the summer, warms in the winter. The steam comes off when you see a pond on a cold spring day. And so there's a tremendous amount of just macro environmental things that happen when you develop ponds. We don't have the beavers today. We do have construction equipment, and so permaculture style, we've built all these ponds up here, and we still build them. Hopefully we're going to build a couple more this year. I just think that we'll build them as long as we're around. We're just going to keep building ponds here. We've built 15 here on this place, and we've built ponds at places that we rent as well. And I think I figured up that we're still not at 1% of our area here as water. So we got a long ways to go till we hit 8%. And so what's happening? The magic of this is, last night we got a 2-inch rain, and so we had there was runoff, and that runoff went into the ponds, and all that little particles of silt and twigs and leaves and anything that accumulated out of the mountains and the ravines that came down, guess where it landed? It didn't go down the river to the Chesapeake Bay. It landed in our ponds. And back about 20 years ago, this pond right here, we rebuilt it. We went in there. It had been in there since the 1950s before we came to the farm. And we went in there and drained it. And that pond right here has a solid limestone floor, and we didn't know that. And we were able to go in there with a track loader and dump trucks, and we had 6 feet of silt that we pulled out of there that was the richest stuff in the world, and we filled up gullies and ditches and all sorts of things as we pulled that out and rebuilt it. So protecting and holding all of that that carbon and erosive material is a big deal. And then of course you've got habitat. I mean the frogs and salamanders. I mean we've had farmers in the area come over here to fish because they don't have any ponds. I think that's awful to not be able to have a pond and you got 100 acres and you can't fish. So it's a joy to be able to have the fish there and have the irrigation to keep the soil biology going when the soil dries out. So those are wonderful, kind of hard to quantify. That's what I'm looking at. Hard to quantify business, hard to put dollars and cents on that kind of stuff, but it's a big deal. Number 2, soil development, okay? So these are all gonna be developments in case you didn't know. Soil development. So, right here where we're sitting, I told you about the thin soil here. Right behind us, there were large areas the size of this, of the LLC here. When I remember when I was a little kid, that were solid rock. There was no grass. I could walk the whole farm and never set foot on a piece of vegetation. It was that barren. There was, hawkweed and wild strawberries, dewberries, ankle scratchers they call them. And the organic matter was less than 1%. And the farm couldn't feed more than about 10 or 12 cows. And today, the organic matter is 8.2%. And remember, every 1% increase in organic matter holds 20,000 gallons of water. So 7 clicks of 20,000 is 140,000 gallons of water per acre that we can hold today that we couldn't hold 50 years ago. Is that not cool? So last night on 2-inch rain, we have a pond up here that one of the other ponds that actually isn't quite full. And I went up to check the cows this morning, and that pond didn't come up at all. I mean, it came up a little bit last night, but the point was we had a 2-inch rain and no runoff. That's organic matter, okay? That's organic matter. That's pretty cool. So the holding capacity is a big deal. And what that means is that the soil, you know, we say the soil deepens. Well, the soil actually doesn't deepen, it actually uppens. Soil uppens, okay? And I remember when we first started running rabbits, Daniel was a little kid and we were running these rabbits outside. We were trying to run them on pasture and keep from digging out of the portable field shelters and all that stuff. And so we actually laid down poultry netting on the ground, ran the rabbits over top of it, and the grass would grow up through the poultry netting, and the rabbits couldn't dig out because they had the netting underneath. And my goodness, within 3 years, we couldn't find the netting. Well, where is it? Well, it was 3 inches down in the ground. The soil had built up from the rabbit droppings and the extra fertility. The soil had built up. It had uppened over the netting barrier and had built up over it. That's pretty cool. Biomass development. Okay, so biomass development. What does that mean? That means you're actually using the sun. I mean, it still is amazing, isn't it? That this and this, so these are wood chips, okay? So all of this carbonaceous material is physical sunlight. It's physical sunlight. I mean, we're in the solar area. Everybody's trying to, put in solar cells and all this stuff. But the trees and grass, forages, chlorophyll, photosynthesis is still the most efficacious solar generation. And so you have these sunbeams that come down. You can't catch a sunbeam. You can't reach it. You can't. But through photosynthesis, it turns into something physical, weighable, fungible. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's pretty cool. And so the problem though is that this grass, it gets up and then it goes to seed. You can see just some of the seed heads here coming. And when it goes to seed, it stops and it turns brown and it quits growing. So by moving the cows around every day, we prune that grass. We prune that off, and that, I know a lot of you can't see this, but these are grass plants that were grazed about 3 days ago, and you can see right here where they bit. You can see that sheath cut, and then this is the new blade that came up from being bitten off just 3 days ago. And so that pruning, you can call it grazing, I like to call it pruning, that pruning actually stimulates the plant to regrow, just like pruning an apple tree, or I would even say disciplining a child prunes them into proper growth, okay? There are amazing object lessons here, okay? And so instead of having the grass just go up and stop growing, the pruning through the grazing actually stimulates the biomass development from the physical sunlight. Number 4, fertility development. Okay, so here's the coolest thing. I've got a bucket, and you're welcome to come up and see this, but I'll just go down here to the front row, have somebody put your hand on that, feel that. See how warm that is? Well, you almost want to sit on that right now, don't you? Right? Okay. And now smell it. All right. Doesn't that smell good? I mean, you can put milk on that and have it for breakfast. Okay. Touch that. Feel how warm it is. Okay. So this is Pigurator compost. and you're welcome to go out and see the pigs doing that. That compost, this is the coolest thing. That was, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that was manure and carbon, okay? So wood chips, carbon, plus manure, and then the pigs turned it and added oxygen. And of course, they're full of microbes. And suddenly, you've got soil gold, all right? Soil gold. And so our mundane work of chipping and putting in the carbon and feeding the cows and all of that mundane work makes literally something that's magic for the soil, and builds that soil and makes it to where it can hold more water and feed more earthworms and all those kinds of things. That's the why. That's going way behind the curtain and saying, hey, look, I think the sun's starting to come out. How about that? Okay. Next one, forestry development. Okay, so anybody that knows me, the farm is known for its livestock, and I get that, and I'm glad for that. What a lot of people don't realize is when you really get to know me, my third arm is a chainsaw. I love the chainsaw. In fact, I'm a big believer that if there's only 1 gallon of gas left in the universe, it needs to go through a chainsaw. And it really strikes me that the chainsaw, as we know it, actually did not get fully developed. The final technology and innovation, engineering that had to develop for the modern chainsaw actually was finished in 1957, the year I was born. So in my lifetime, I've often thought, man, life without a chainsaw. I can't imagine what life without a chainsaw would be like. There wasn't anybody fat back then, I can tell you that much, because it was all, manual. But the whole idea here of the chainsaw, the chipper, making these chips, working in the woods, we spend a lot of time working in the woods, and what that's for is to develop carbon, okay? To develop carbon to integrate with the manure, so we integrate the forest with the open land, and the trees. If you know anything about permaculture, one of the mantras of permaculture is we need more forest and fewer trees. Our eastern forests are overcrowded. We were talking about that in a trip up the mountain last night too, that the Native Americans lit fires all the time to open up the landscape for the bison to grow grass, to kill, diseased and weak trees. They didn't have a chainsaw. And so this was their weeding mechanism. It also made charcoal to draw in the wildlife for good hunting, because wildlife didn't have mineral boxes like we give the cows. They had to go find their minerals, and so they were drawn, unlike Disney and Bambification, they were actually drawn to the ashes and the charcoal post-burn, and so this was a way to draw in, to attract the wildlife so it would be better hunting. And so our work in the woods is all a part of not only weeding the trees so that we pick the good trees, take out the junk ones, and encourage the growth, but it also means that we now have carbon to add to the cows, to act as a carbonaceous diaper in the wintertime when the soil mycelium and actinomycetes are sleeping and can't take the fertility. We can add that, we can create that in the winter with an integrated approach and build order out of chaos in all these ramifications of the farm. Integrated carbon. Number 6, earthworm development. So earthworms, there is nothing as magic as an earthworm. Let me see if I can, come here, buddy. I had a couple in here. There you go. Where'd you go? These guys, they're quick, you know. They get away from you if you're not careful. It must be on the other side. Where are you, earthworms? I put about 8 of them in here. Boy, they all can't find them when you need them. This soil, I need more light here. There you go. There's a nice big one. Okay. A nice big earth. See that nice big earthworm? Look at him. He's all looking around. I didn't break his tunnel up, so he's actually still in his original tunnel. But think about an earthworm. I mean, these things are about as close to alchemy. Let me pull him out here. There he is. There you go. Nice little earthworm. Hey, buddy. That earthworm digs through soil. He eats soil, and through his alimentary canal, what comes out of his alimentary canal? Think about this. He takes in a pound of material and excretes a pound of material, and what he excretes has 3 times the calcium, 7 times the potassium, 11 times the phosphorus of what he took in. How does that happen? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I mean, it would be one thing if he ate a pound and pooped out half a pound. You say, well, he's just concentrating it. That'd be easy. But he's not concentrating it. He's actually converting it, changing it. And so part of the composting process, this is what the earthworm wants. Okay, so this is earthworm food. All right? Think on it. This is earthworm food. And the earthworm takes this and actually manufactures mineral just mysteriously. I mean, is that not the coolest thing? So if we integrate carbon with manure and make compost to feed earthworms, earthworms will mineralize, fertilize, create stuff. Now, all of us, if we're watching the news, we all know what's the big deal with the war in Ukraine and all that stuff. All the fertilizer has gone up, 200, 300, 400%. Farmers are just having a fit. We're talking about food shortages. We can't get wheat. We can't get all this stuff. I have just showed you we don't need their fertilizer. We don't need their chemical potassium, their ammonium nitrate. We don't need that stuff. So when you start saying, what's the value of this recipe, it not only has very practical, production things, it affects foreign policy, cultural exchange. Are you with me? I mean, this is a big deal, okay? It really is that simple. It's just amazing. All right. Next. Landscape development. Okay, so landscape development. So as we've worked here on the farm, a lot of people don't realize, one of the first things we did when we came in 1961 was we planted about 60 acres in trees. All of those trees across the road, that was all bare rock. There were sheep there, overgrazing, not controlled, and we were, it was bare rock. This whole hillside here, all those, that was no tree there. That was just terraced cow paths, overgrazed, eroding gullies. And so we planted trees. We just fenced out and let squirrels plant trees. And it's gone through that development stage. Then we started building ponds. And what this does is it creates edge effect. Edge effect. I don't know about you, but one of my most enjoyable, about this time of year, it'll be coming on here pretty quick in the next, probably in the next month, by June at least, is to come up on a clutch of wild turkeys, newly hatched, and pick up the little day-old poult. By the time they're a week, you can't get them. But if they're under a week, Those little 6 or 7, 8, they're with mama, you can actually walk over, pick one up. Of course, mama goes over here 12 feet. She has a fit, she's carrying on. But there's something magic about that. What makes that happen, my hands, what makes that happen is edge effect. You see, turkey poults need about 28% protein. You can't get 28% protein in the woods. You only get 28% protein if there's bugs. There are very few bugs in the woods. Deep woods are actually fairly sterile. Those of you, you go hiking in deep woods, it's fairly sterile. There's not a lot in there. But out in the pasture, in the prairie, there's bugs galore. There's grasshoppers and crickets and little roly-polies and bugs and all sorts of things. And so you can't have a healthy wild turkey population unless you have edge. They hide in the woods and they come out in the field to eat, the little ones. As they mature, then the protein requirement for the mamas and daddies, it drops down into the 16%. So they don't need as many bugs. But the little ones really, really do. And so this bringing edge, the ponds, the tree lines, all this landscape design where you have the intersecting open land, forest land, water land environment, what it does is it creates this mosaic of surprise. So you go around a corner and there's a turkey sitting on eggs. You go around a corner, I've stepped on fawns. Talk about being startled. I don't know who's more startled, and the fawn me, and I'm jumping, he's jumping. I've stepped on rattlesnakes. Now that's a startling thing, okay? But the point is that this diversified wildlife is a direct result of increased edge effect. That's what game biologists call edge effect. And so we work. Yes, we plant trees and we build ponds and we do shovel work and we're running the chainsaw and all those things. But at the end of the day, it makes such an interesting place. Next, choreographic development. So we build a lot of fence, build a lot of mobile infrastructure, and what that does is give us the ability to move animals around all the time. So that instead of being cooped up in one place, they're moved around all the time. And by moving them around, it makes a new ground effect. It's always a new ground effect. The beauty of new ground and that uneven vegetation, having the tall stuff, the short stuff, uneven vegetation is that you really increase the pollinators. We just finished a Smithsonian 2-year study on working landscapes, and they found all 8 Virginia known varieties of bumblebees here. They were all excited, and so were we. And the reason is because the mosaic landscape, there's always something in bloom. There's always something needing to be pollinated, as opposed to monocrops, monocultures, single type blossoms that give you mass. The fact that these honeybee people move the hives around is not indicative of serving agriculture. Actually, that's indicative of a terrible agriculture that goes through feast and famine from a landscape standpoint, rather than such a diversified, gentle, common food, always something in blossom. It indicates a tremendous lack of diversity within a landscape when they're having to move these beehives around, not to mention all that it does for the bees. And so the choreography of moving and okay, we got to build more fence, we got to put in fence posts. Yeah, but the whole goal here is to be able to control, manage, and move everything so that you get this mosaic and this diversified landscape. Next, animal development. All right, so the animals are not just food, they become co-laborers. The animals are symbiotic to us. So, oh, take it easy. You're okay. So this is not just, this is not just a chicken. It is a chicken. But it's not just a chicken. So the animals don't just become bacon and, and boneless, skinless breast or whatever. They actually become team players and co-laborers. So if you go up and check out the eggmobile follows the cows, and the chickens then range out from the cows, and they scratch through the cow patties and spread them out to add fertilizer, more fertilizer, so it's not just a pie, it now covers a much bigger area. And they eat out the fly larvae, so the cows now don't have to have grubicides and parasiticides. The cows are healthy. The earthworms get more food because it's spread out more. In the racken house, rabbit chicken, the chickens are underneath. They're scratching through the rabbit droppings, creating aerated compost under the rabbits, which keeps the ammonia from the rabbit urine coming up into their head, so it all smells great. And so suddenly the animals are not just production oriented, they are fellow team players in this great land healing ministry. And that completely changes the spiritual emotional impact. And so, talk about another alchemy. I mean, think about this. This chicken, she goes out and she eats worms and bugs and fly maggots and kitchen scraps. And at the end of the day, she takes that stuff in. Can you do that? No. And she gives us one of the most complete nutritive, you can just about live on eggs. How long could you, if you ran out of stuff, how long could you live on eggs? You could live on eggs a long time. And I think that that's just a wonderful example of the democratized access that we're supposed to have to food. All this fake meat and Beyond Burger and unpronounceable food and monosodium glutamate and all the stuff that's in food that you can't make in your kitchen, that you need a chemistry lab to make, or a $1 billion stainless steel factory to make. That is, at its philosophical level, an extremely elitist, non-accessible food system. But if you've got bugs and a chicken, you can have eggs, right? And almost anybody can do that. That's the ultimate complete access kind of deal. So, thank you, lady. So we actually integrate. The reason I had the second one in there is so they have a partner. I didn't want to bring her up here by herself. Social. So we see the animals as a symbiotic partner in land healing. And if you go out to see the pigs, the pigs making this compost, we didn't turn this with a $25,000 compost turner. This was created by the pigs. The pigs are we call them the pig aerators, so pig aerators. And they're aerating, stirring that compost, making it. And so instead of using depreciable equipment and burning petroleum through it and steering it, we use the pigs. We don't have to steer them. We don't have to change their oil. They never need a spare part. They work for a lot less than minimum wage. They never complain. They always show up on time, and they're working while we're here talking. And so, we love to use equipment that way. So there's this whole cool thing going on, and it fully honors the distinctiveness of the pig. So that the pig is not now just bacon and pork chops. The pig is, again, a co-laborer with us. And I would suggest that creating a place where the pigs can be happy and be honored, respected as distinctive beings, is probably the ethical, moral framework on which we preserve that kind of respect and honor for the Thomas of Tom, the Maryness of Mary, and even the diversity of cultures. A culture that does not respect the pigness of the pig will probably not respect the Maryness of Mary and the Thomas of Tom, and will become manipulative and exploitive rather than respectful. Number 10, nutrition development, okay? Again, we've got the egg from the salvage. We've got greens. I want you to think about this. This is kind of cool. So if you look at a cookbook from Martha Washington or Dolly Madison, more than half of the stuff in there we've never heard of. In fact, we now know that the Aborigines in Australia commonly ate, in a year's time, they would eat up to 2,000 different kinds of things. Americans eat about 20, literally, okay? So I've been thinking about that a lot. How do we get our microbiome? I drink out of this cow tank and all this stuff. I'm all into trying to get diversified microbiome, and it struck me. So here's burdock. Cows love that. It's a medicinal herb. Has a lot of medicinal qualities. Here's some pokeweed. Cows love that. Here's dandelion. Dandelion also has a lot of medicinal qualities. Here's some plantain. That's a broadleaf plantain right here, which is a blood medic. It cleanses your blood. Of course, you've got your grass. What I'm getting at is that so the mundane of moving the cows every day and building the fences and having the water systems and all that mundanity, what it does, it creates this diversified forage base, what we call the salad bar. And guess what? Now when those cows eat this, they're eating, each one of these has a different set of enzymes, minerals, a whole different thing. And so the beef, rather than just being corn and soybeans from a feedlot, actually carries, the meat actually carries the eggs from the chickens. The chickens eat this stuff. All of the stuff carries this tremendous diversity. So one of the, to our microbiome, things that we don't even know. And so one of the quickest and best ways that you and I can increase our diversified intake for our microbiome is to eat eggs, meat, milk from animals that are ingesting this full complement of diversified salad bar, okay? That's pretty cool. And so then our internal organs, sense it and see it, and they get to enjoy it. One of the things that we have, Daniel's over there cooking the chicken here for lunch. One of the things that we've noticed working with chefs all the time is that all of our stuff here, and this is not a shameless ad. Well, it's an ad, but it's not shameless. Anyway, one of the biggest problems we have in our marketing is that everything cooks 25% faster than supermarket stuff. Well, why is that? We don't know exactly, but our hunch is that because our animals are stress-free, they haven't lived a life secreting adrenaline that seizes up the muscular connective tissue and makes them come in hardened through their life. So they're gentle and tender, and so that's a huge benefit. Next, farmer development. I'm almost done. Farmer development, okay? One of the best things, talk about tough. You're going to see our team running around here, and we've got the best team in the world. But I'll tell you what, it takes as much effort to keep an excited, enthusiastic, relationally forgiving team as it does all the other things we've ever done, okay? So the stewards just came, we're in the first week, they just came on last weekend. This is their first week here. But I can tell you, as I travel the country, the world, and I see the average American farmer at 60 years old and alone, I can't imagine being at my age and being alone. No wonder farmers are depressed. And so to be able to live every day, suddenly that effort of massaging the team, creating SOPs, moving a chicken shelter, our SOP, standard operating procedure, for moving a chicken shelter, 6 pages long. Boy, that's mundane. You just got to sit down at the desk and crank it out. What is all this? But the result of that is that there's a clear communication. Now the team can embrace it. Everybody knows what the expectations, what's going on. And the bottom line is that it germinates new, excited, enthusiastic young farmers. So that instead of seeing this country being taken over by corporate interests or whatever, we're attracting a new generation of stewards who will massage and caretake our landscape into the future. That's worthwhile. And finally, participation development. I'm constantly reminded that on his deathbed, somebody asked Weston A. Price. Sally talks about this all the time. What should we do? And if I remember correctly, he said, you teach, and you teach. And sometimes it's really mundane and irritating to answer the questions like, how do I cook a chicken? How can I afford good food? What's the difference between your egg and the store-bought egg? I mean, we answer those questions every day, sometimes many times a day. And when you do this year after year, day after day after day, it can get tiring. But what's the payback? The payback is when somebody finally gets it, they taste it, they see their child's autism decrease, they see their psoriasis decrease, their irritable bowels, re-nourishing traditions. You see those things and the light goes on and they come back to the story and say, wow, we had no idea that it was this difference. And suddenly the magic of all those things that we've poured over and prayed over and sweated over and worked, that magic comes alive in the countenance of a patron who becomes a cheerleader, who becomes a participant in embracing our ecological umbilical and caressing our womb like true stewards and caretakers. That's a cool thing. So, we do a lot of repetitive stuff. We do a lot of stuff over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, it creates a world that is consistent to our mission statement here at Polyface, which is to develop emotionally, ecologically, and economically enhancing agricultural prototypes and facilitate their duplication throughout the world. Thank you for coming. I hope we're going to have a great day. Thank you, Hilda, for letting me share. Blessings on you.